By the way, in this meeting before Donald Trump, there was a DOJ person that spoke and said that they would be trying student protesters as terrorists. Okay, that was, I repeat, this is not, I'm not joking. They straight up said that they would be examining, the U.S. Department of Justice is examining whether student protests at Columbia University over the genocide in Gaza violated federal terrorism laws. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said today. Blanche's department previously said the investigation is also looking into civil rights violations stemming from the administration's expanded definition of anti-Semitism to include criticisms of Israel. Holy shit.
Very special. For generations, the Federal Department of Justice was one of America's most revered institutions. The men and women of brought down the mafia, hunted down the killers, kingpins, and spies, tracked down terrorists and traitors, and tore down corrupt political machines all across America. This department commanded the respect and admiration of the entire world. And with Pam and Cash and all of the people I introduced and far more, big numbers, and all of you sitting back there, I recognize so many of you. But with you leading the way, it'll soon be the most admired and most respected of all. You're going to be more respected, and I really believe that there's also a lot of things to solve, a lot of problems to solve. But that's going to put you in the upper tier and maybe the top tier, and I believe that's going to happen. I'm so proud of the people in this room. But first, we must be honest about the lies and abuses that have occurred within these walls. Unfortunately, in recent years, a corrupt group of hacks and radicals within the ranks of the American government obliterated the trust and goodwill built up over generations. They weaponized the vast powers of our intelligence and law enforcement agencies to try and thwart the will of the American people. You remember the 51 intelligence agents that said, as an example, that Hunter Biden's laptop from hell came from Russia.
Oh, God.
When they knew it came right from his bedroom. They knew that. It was a big lie, and they knew it so well. They spied on my campaign, launched one hoax and disinformation operation after another, broke the law on a colossal scale, persecuted my family, staff, and supporters, raided my home, Mar-a-Lago, and did everything within their power to prevent me from becoming the President of the United States. With the help of radicals like Mark Elias, Mark Pomerantz, and these are people that nobody's ever seen anything like it. So many others, but these are people that are bad people, really bad people. They tried to turn America into a corrupt, communist, and third world country. But in the end, the thugs failed and the truth won. Freedom won, justice won, democracy won, and above all, the American people won. There could be no more heinous betrayal of American values than to use the law to terrorize the innocent and reward the wicked. And that's what they were doing at a level that's never been seen before. And it's exactly what you saw with Joe Biden, Merrick Garland, and their cronies to do the building of the last 4 years. What they've ripped down is incalculable. But what you're going to build up is likewise something that will be breaking all sorts of records. They set loose violent criminals while targeting patriotic parents at school board meetings. They dropped charges against Antifa and Hamas supporters while labeling traditional Catholics as domestic terrorists. The Catholics, we did very well with the Catholic vote, so I want to thank them for that. They really did record numbers. I would say, what's with the Catholics? They're really after the Catholics, so I don't know. They were after a lot of people. Maybe they didn't even know why. They imported illegal alien murderers, drug dealers, and child predators from all over the world to come into our country while putting elderly Christians and pro-life activists on trial for singing hymns and for saying prayers. They went to jail for that. Our predecessors turned this Department of Justice into the Department of Injustice. But I stand before you today to declare that those days are over, and they are never going to come back. They're never coming back.
More consolidation of power, utilizing the Department of Justice for his own personal goals, for his own personal agenda.
So now,
Straight
as
up.
the chief law enforcement officer in our
Straightforward
country,
fascism, folks. That's
I
what
will
this is.
insist upon and demand full and complete accountability for the wrongs and abuses that have occurred. The American people have given us a mandate like few people thought possible. We won every single swing state. We won the popular vote by millions and millions of people. We won districts, 2,750. Think of that, 2,750 districts compared to 505. So we won it at levels that have, I don't believe, ever seen before. That's the one where you see the map of the United States and it's all red. Red for Republican, not for communist. Red for Republican. They would like it to turn red for communist, but it didn't work out that way. The American people have given us a mandate and really just a far-reaching investigation is what they are demanding into the corruption of our system. And that's exactly, I'm sure, what Pam and Cash and everyone else mentioned here and not mentioned is going to be doing. We will expel the rogue actors and corrupt forces from our government. We will expose and very much expose their egregious crimes and severe misconduct, of which was levels you've never seen anything like it. It's going to be legendary. It's going to also be legendary for the people that are able to seek it out and bring justice. We will restore the scales of justice in America, and we will ensure that such abuses never happen again in our country. And that's why on day one I signed an executive order banning all government censorship and directing the removal of every bureaucrat who conspired to attack free speech and many other things and values in America. My administration stripped the security clearances of the disgraced intelligence agents who lied about Hunter Biden's laptop from hell. We revoked the clearances of deranged Jack Smith, Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, and the crooked law firms that aided their partisan persecutions. And I went through it. These are state and city courts, and the corruption is unbelievable. We also terminated the clearances of the Biden crime family and Joe Biden himself. He didn't deserve it. In fact, he was essentially found guilty, but they said he was incompetent, and therefore let's not find him guilty, I guess. Nobody knows what that ruling was, but I didn't want any part of it. I think I would have rather been found guilty than what they found with him. They said he didn't know what the hell he was doing, and therefore he's let him go. I said, you know, I'd rather be convicted, Pam, I think, than that. That was not, I said, please convict me, don't say that. I pardoned hundreds of political prisoners who had been grossly mistreated. We removed the senior FBI officials who misdirected resources to send SWAT teams after grandmothers and J6 hostages. And it was a great honor for me to fire, I will tell you this, a great honor to fire James Comey. A great, great honor. That was nothing. There was no better day. A lot of people said, oh, that's too bad you did that. And they said that's going to be, and you know what?
Dude, we're running back. We're running back the hits from the first one.
Because the
first
of
admin.
Things that we learned after that turned out to be that they were doing, in fact, really bad things. He was a terrible person, did terrible things, and persecuted people. And all in the guise of being an angel, but he wasn't an angel. We created a brand new DOJ task force and anti-Christian bias. And under Director Patel, we're getting the FBI agents out of the headquarters in Washington, D.C., and back on the streets in pursuit of dangerous criminals where they belong and where they want to be. And, you know, you have that big FBI building, and it's a very big building, and they were going to build an FBI headquarters 3 hours away in Maryland, a liberal state, but that has no bearing on what I'm about to say, but we're going to stop it. Not going to let that happen. We're going to build another big FBI building right where it is, which would have been the right place because the FBI and the DOJ have to be near each other. You can't that's one thing I did learn from this persecution. The FBI and the DOJ work together. Now, in my case, they work together for bad purposes, but they do. They were always together. So how can you have one that's 3 hours away? But one thing I said to Cash, well, we're going to get a great building built. It's going to be a magnificent building. He said, sir, we don't need that kind of room. I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm just going to take a old Department of Commerce building that's about 25% the size, and that's what I need. We're going to have the best staff that you've ever seen, and that's what I need. It's in a nice location, but I don't need that big building. Why don't you just sell the site to somebody, and we're going to be very happy. And they want to have far fewer people, but we also want to have them in D.C., and if for no other reason, we like having law enforcement walking the streets of our capital, because when the bad guys are out there and they see there's an FBI agent, that's the ultimate in law enforcement, and they're not going to be acting so bad. We're cleaning up our city. We're cleaning up this great capital, and we're not going to have crime, and we're not going to stand for crime, and we're going to take the graffiti down, and we're already taking the tents down, and we're working with the administration, and if the administration can't do the job, we're going to have to take it back and run it through the federal government. But we hope the administration is going to be able. So far, they've been doing very well. The mayor's been doing a good job. We said there are tents galore right opposite.
Chat, shut the fuck up. This is not just Trump yapping, okay? This is important to understand where he's going to take it. I know Bernie's on the Senate floor right now. Shut up. Go watch it on your own if you want to. We have to listen to the current president, literally at the Department of Justice, talk about how he is going to weaponize the Department of Justice. I know you don't want to hear it. I know it sounds shitty. He's rambling on about the same old things over and over again. But in there is nuggets of things that he's going to do next. And we have to fucking address it.
I didn't want to have him see graffiti. I didn't want to have him see broken barriers and potholes in the roads. And we had it looking beautiful. And we're going to do that for the city. And we're going to have a crime-free capital. When people come here, they're not going to be mugged or shot or raped. They're going to have a crime-free capital again. It's going to be cleaner and better and safer than it ever was. And it's not going to take us too long. There's a new phenomena that is taking place with these violent, vicious lawyers that we have all over. They play the ref. You know what playing the ref is? Like the great Bobby Knight basketball coach. He'd scream and scream at the ref. He'd scream. I watched it. By the way, I love Bobby Knight because he endorsed me. And having Bobby Knight's endorsement in Indiana was an extremely good thing. A friend of mine said I was running in Indiana at the time. This was early on, 2016. And I was doing great. But a friend came up and said, you know Bobby Knight? I said, no, I don't. But I hear he was a tough cookie. He said, not only tough, he was beyond tough, but he's the most popular guy you can imagine. It turned out he wanted to endorse me. He called me about 2 years before. He said, sir, I'd like to endorse you. I said, is this really Bobby Knight? He said, it's me. I could tell it was Bobby Knight. He had been known for throwing the chair across the court and slapping a player. Can't do things like that, right? And the man that came in fired him. He was a new administrator for the college. That guy didn't last very long. They were like 14-0, and they fired Coach Knight. That was not good, but he had a little chip in his shoulder. But he loved Trump, and he came in, and he said, I'd love to endorse you. He said, if you ever run, please call me. So he said, you know Bobby Knight? I said, well, I don't know him, but he called me a couple of years ago. It was an amazing phenomenon. I took his number, and on each side of my desk in New York, I had stacks of paper, like nice and neat, but about 2 feet high each. And I said, you know, I wrote his number down and I put it here 2 years ago. And I said, let me see if I can find it. It was almost like a miracle. I had other miracles that happened too. My ear is still throbbing. That was a miracle. That was a miracle also, wasn't it? That was a miracle also.
Is this a policy speech? Yes and no. Trump never actually has a pure policy speech, but it doesn't matter because this is where he will tell you what he's going to do next.
That was a miracle. Anyway, okay, that's very nice, thank you. But so he said, Bobby Knight. So I said, you know, I put his name down and I wrote it down. It's in one of these stacks. I lifted up. There would have to be 2,000 to 3,000 pages in each stack. I lifted it up, the first one, had no idea. And there was his name on a little card, Bobby Knight with his number. It was like incredible. I tell that story all the time. And I called him and dialed a number. He said, I've been waiting for you to call. And he went out and he made a speech for me in a packed arena in Indiana, and it was over. It was over. He was a tough guy. He actually went a little far, you know. If you remember, he made a great speech because he was actually a motivational type guy, to put it mildly.
Andrew just landed a $642 million Pentagon contract. Awesome.
He walks back onto the stage. I said, "Uh-oh, this is trouble. Why is he coming back?" He was a big guy too. Why is he coming back? He said, "May I say a few more words?"
Great.
I said, "Yeah, go ahead, Bobby. Say a few more words." A little different. And he said, "And let me tell you something about this guy, Trump. This guy, if he has to, will use the nuclear weapons that we have. He will use he has no fear. He's going to use, and that's the kind of guy." And he walked off the stage. I said, I think I'm in big trouble, Pam." That was not good, but it worked out okay. In the meantime, we won the state in a landslide, and it was great, and it was just an amazing period of time. But this is the most amazing period of time. I think this is more amazing. What's taken place is more amazing. I think it's more consequential, and if we do the job, you know, one of the big media outlets said what we did was the most consequential election in the last 129 years. Well, if we do the job that we're all capable of doing, I think it's going to prove to be that and then some, and that's what we want to do. We have a real big shot at making this country so great, so great. What happened to our country was so sad. What they've done in 4 years to our country with the borders, with Afghanistan, the most embarrassing period of time, allowing the Russian situation, it was never going to happen, with Ukraine. Allowing October 7th to happen would have never happened, because under me, Iran was totally broke. They had no money. They weren't giving any money to Hamas or Hezbollah. It was totally broke. But allowing inflation, look at what inflation's done to people, been so devastating. And now you see that, by the way, price of eggs is down 35% in the last week and a half. We're doing a good job. Brooke is doing a good job. Brooke Rollins and everybody. And inflation's down, interest rates are down, gasoline has come down to a level that we haven't seen in a long time. All things that we wanted to do, because then everything else is going to be coming down. We want it to come down. We want bacon to come down, and groceries, a term I used to use. It's sort of an old-fashioned term, but I used to use it on the campaign trail, those last 90 perfect, beautiful days. We just hit it. And I want to thank Susie. You have done a great job. Susie Wiles. Great job, Susan. A big magazine just named her the most powerful woman in the world, and that's okay with me. She is the most powerful woman. You think about it, John, right? The most powerful woman in the world, but she's great. And we had a great 90 days. It was a perfect 90 days, and it was a great result, but we want to put that result to good use by doing a phenomenal job. And
the saddest part about him just being like, prices are going to come down, they're coming down already, is that there is enough people in his audience that unironically believe it, where they're like, they go to the grocery store, they don't experience it, but they still believe it, where they're like, hell yeah, well, my president said so, so it must be the case. It's insane.
But I did appoint her, federal judge, and these fake lawyers, these horrible human beings, were hitting her so hard, public relations-wise. They were playing the ref. I don't think it's legal. I don't think it's legal. They might as well go out and just shout it in a courthouse. They were saying she was slow, she wasn't smart, she was totally biased, she loved Trump. I didn't know her, other than I saw her the couple of days that I was in court, and I thought her decorum was amazing. Anything bad they could say, though, they were saying about her, it was whatever they could say bad about a human being, all made up. Because actually she was brilliant. She moved quickly. She was the absolute model of what a judge should be. And she was strong and tough. And how do you get them to stop if you're a judge? How do you get them to stop with the playing the ref? Bobby Knight would play the ref. That's why I brought up the Bobby Knight story. He would play the ref. He'd scream at the ref. He'd scream so hard. Oh, boy, it was terrible, actually. And the
eggs are down,
People
but that's
would come
because
up,
we're
his
importing 10
assistant
million eggs from
coaches would come
Turkey
up to
and
place,
now begging
"Coach,
Denmark
coach,
and
don't
Sweden
do
for
that.
eggs too. We're
Don't
literally
do
importing
it."
hundreds of millions of
He
eggs
said
from
he's
Europe.
not
It's not a
gonna
legitimate
change
price
his
decrease. His manufacturer is going to
tune,
shoot back
Coach.
up when
He
people
called it.
stop
He's not
subsidizing
changing.
us.
I don't care.
Turkey will always
And he's
subsidize the
screaming.
U.S.
That's
Are
when
you
he
kidding
threw
me?
the chair. He starts going crazy. And he said, no, he's not going to change this time, but he's going to change for the next play. And sure as hell he did. You know, Bobby, by the way, had the last undefeated team in basketball. And relatively speaking, you know, he had that team. He always had a team. He never had that. Well, he had a couple of great players, obviously, some top NBA players, but very few relatively. He had a team, but he won the national championship 3 times. But he had the last undefeated team in basketball. And he would play the ref, and he would scream at him. He knew exactly what he was doing. They're doing the same thing.
Ironic how you can talk about eggs so much, he refused to go vegan. Cognitive dissonance is crazy. Take a day off,
They
vegan.
wanted to scare the hell out of the judges, and they do it. And how do you stop it if you're a judge? Because you want to go home, you have a family, you have children, and the New York Times will write whatever these people say, and the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal, and MSDNC, and the fake news CNN, and ABC, CBS, and NBC, and they'll write whatever they say. And what do you do to get rid of it? You convict Trump. All you have to do is be really tough on him and ultimately convict him, and they leave you alone. It's totally illegal what they do. I just hope you can all watch for it, but it's totally illegal. And it was so unfair what they were doing to her. But they do it all the time with judges. But in her case, she was very courageous, and it only made her angry. Wouldn't you say? It just made her angry. She didn't like it. A lot of them say, oh, please don't say that about me. My family, what's my husband going to say? What's my wife going to say, or my kids? Please don't say that. And it had absolutely no impact on her in the case against me, which was a case, I will not use a bad word. I promised my wife I would never use a bad word, so just a little bad. The case against me was bullshit. And she correctly dismissed it. She correctly. Look at Emil, he's looking. That's interesting. But these 2 guys were warriors. You got a warrior here. You got 2 warriors, I can tell you that. You got a whole bunch of them. But, and they wouldn't quit. They wouldn't take no for an answer. They just wouldn't quit. These 2 people right up here, and some others that are involved with it indirectly. And what the lawyers do is they're doing it to the Supreme Court justices, hoping that they'll be overcome by the horrible things they say about them. They say things about Supreme Court justices and judges that are just horrible. They're playing the ref. Remember the way they treated Justice Thomas and Justice Alito and Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Gorsuch. Chief Justice Roberts get treated unbelievably badly, and they're hoping that they can sway them to go along because, again, what do? They're humans. You know, it would be wonderful if everybody was just a perfect computer machine, but they're not. They're humans, and they don't want to be accused of many, many things, including gross incompetence. They don't like it, and they don't want it. There's not much they can do about it. You know, they're in a position they can't really fight back really very well. And so what they do is sometimes
going to replace SCOTUS with Grok.
I would say a majority, maybe, of the time.
He would never do that because SCOTUS works for him.
Judge Cannon in Florida.
The moment that it doesn't, though, is a wrap.
It actually made her more resolute than anything I've seen. I mean, it was amazing because they were hitting her so hard. It was so sad to watch this. But it's sad what they do to other judges. It's very sad what they do to the Supreme Court. And a lot of the judges that I had, if you look at them, they take tremendous abuse in the New York Times and the Washington Post, all of the different networks. They take such abuse. And honestly, very simply, they're afraid of bad publicity. They don't want bad publicity. And it's truly interference, in my opinion, and it should be illegal, and it probably is illegal in some form. There's no difference than speaking to a judge or shouting to a judge or doing whatever you have to do in a courthouse. They're doing it behind the back. They're usually doing it anonymously. They're saying anonymously, off the record, the judge is no good, but everybody knows where it's coming from. And it's totally coordinated. It's a campaign, and it's by the same scum that you have been dealing with for years, like guys like Andrew Weissman, deranged Jack Smith. There's a guy named Norm Eisen. I don't even know what he looks like. His name is Norm Eisen of Crew. He's been after me for 9 years. Now, Crew is a charitable organization. And the reason I'm saying this, Todd, is I'm only going to get one chance to say this. But these are bad people. I don't know who he is. I don't know what he looks like.
He's like, I'm coming after him. Charitable organizations, it's time for you to go to jail. Coming after me is illegal.
That's a political thing.
That's what's happening, yeah. If you come after the president and you're a part of a charitable organization, I will revoke your 501c3 status and I will jail you.
Probably had pretty good success over the years.
That's terrorism too.
But with me,
well, fuck it. Why not? Why not? Why not?
Because I'm president.
Coming after the president is terrorism. How dare you? I'm the president.
Tremendous abuse, like these wonderful guys. They're not legitimate people. They're horrible people. They're scum, and you have to know that. And you're going to have these cases where you can't allow yourselves to be deflected. You just can't let it happen. You have such a higher calling. And I believe that CNN and MSDNC, who literally write 97.6% bad about me, are political arms of the Democrat Party. And in my opinion, they're really corrupt and they're illegal. What they do is illegal. It makes no difference how big a victory I had. I can have the biggest victory in history. It makes no difference what kind of a failure the other side has. These people are going to go after me. And I said it during the big speech on Tuesday night. I said about Democrats, and I don't like that. I have great respect, by the way, for what Schumer did today. He went out and he said that I'm going to have to vote with the Republicans because it's the right thing to do. I couldn't believe what I heard. But, I think he's going to get some credit for it. I think. Let's see what happens tonight with the big vote as it comes. But these networks and these newspapers are really no different than a highly paid political operative. And it has to stop. It has to be illegal. It's influencing judges, and it's really changing law, and it just cannot be legal. I don't believe it's legal. And they do it in total coordination with each other. And everything we do, we're restoring law, restoring order, and restoring public safety in America. That's what we want to do. And we're bringing honor and integrity and accountability back to the highest levels of the FBI, DOJ, and throughout our government. We're bringing our country back faster than anyone ever thought possible. We're working so hard at doing it. And we want fairness in the courts. The courts are a big factor. The elections, which were totally rigged, are a big factor. We have to have honest elections. We have to have borders. And we have to have courts and law that's fair. Well, we're not going to have a country. Crooked Joe Biden got us into a real mess with Russia and everything else he did, frankly, but he didn't know about it. And he, generally speaking, signed it with auto pen. So how would he know? That auto pen is a big deal. I don't know. They're having who's doing this? So when my people come up, Will and all of the people, Steve, they come
Chatter
up
say
and
he's
say,
going to go
"This
after
is
the
the
press, but
executive order. They
honestly,
explain it to me,
I
and,
don't know who we would go
90% of the
after in
time I
mainstream
sign,
media because most
99%
of
the
mainstream
time I
media
say,
is
"Do it."
like fairly
come up and I sign
compliant
But
with the
the
demands that
argument's
Trump is
auto pen.
making.
It's,
In
number
terms
one,
of
it's
like
disrespectful to the
who
office.
he would
Number
go
two,
after, it'd
maybe
be
it's
people
not
like
even valid
in
because,
independent media, people like
who's getting
myself,
him
most
to sign?
likely.
He had no idea what
Because
the hell he was
there's
doing.
not
He
much
all
there's
these
not
bad
much
things
real
that
like
happening
motion. Like
right
Rachel
now.
Maddow is angry at Trump, but not in a way
We're
that
gonna get
actually
you back
harms
into
him.
a
You know
great
what I mean?
position. We've already started. They say that we had the most successful first month of presidency. Not a long time,
Because
but it's
those
still
guys
a
are
lot.
not gonna those guys are
like
not
if
gonna
you're
come
golfer
out and
sinking a
boldly
3-foot
declare
putt, the
Israel to
first
be a
hole,
genocidal
gives you
apartheid state or whatever.
confidence to sink
Because
something on
it's
the
clear
second
that that
hole,
is
but
the
if you
weapon
miss
that
that
they're
first,
wielding. The pre-existing
you'll
like
let that
anti-Semitism,
on the second
the
hole,
the
third
pre-existing
hole. It could be
anti-Semitism
very bad
statutes that they've greatly expanded on,
Nice to get that
and
first month, and now we have
decided that
more
like criticism of Israel is now anti-Semitism is what they're going with. That's the weapon they're wielding. MSNBC is never going to say something that comes across as even remotely anti-Zionist. So I think in the short term, the people that they will go after, the administration will go after in the press or in media or student activists are all going to be are all going to be anti-Zionist.
maybe 350
That will open up the
being
floodgates
close
to expanding on terrorism charges. The utilization of the vague definition of terrorism will be all-encompassing and will move further and further into different territories, like maybe vandalizing a Tesla, maybe operating a NGO or operating a 501c3 that criticizes Donald Trump.
They're from nowhere close to here, but they're young people.
That's where we're
They're
at.
human beings, and they have parents. They have sisters and brothers, the mothers and fathers, the friends and the families and the towns where they grew up. And they're losing, on average, 2,000, even 2,500 a week. And I want to get it stopped. And we've had some very good calls today with Russia. And with Ukraine, they've agreed for a ceasefire if we can get it with Russia. And it's not easy. It's a tough one. But I think we're doing it. And as the Secretary General said yesterday of NATO, a terrific guy, he said without Trump, we wouldn't be talking about it. It would just go on for years and millions more people, millions of people have been killed, but millions more people would be killed. And he said it was a great honor. Without me, it would just keep going on. We're looking for the ceasefire now with Russia.
Yeah, foreign press that reports stuff he doesn't like will self-censor before they get deported. So it's kind of getting what he wants anyway. True, that too.
I can tell you that there was a case where there would have been no war if I were president, and it's just 100% would not have happened, would never have happened. I used to speak to President Putin a lot about it. I said, don't do it. Don't do it. I won't tell you what the consequence was. I won't tell you what he's, but if he believed even 5% of what I said, then he would say, I'm not going to do it. And I think he did. But we had a good relationship, and we had a professional relationship, and his respect for this country. And I think we've had some very good results. So, I haven't been able to say that to anybody else. I haven't wanted to say it until just before I came here. I got some pretty good news. So, but we have to see what happens. It's still a long way to go. The fighting is unbelievable. Russia has a large group of Ukrainian soldiers, as we speak, surrounded and in grave danger. They've been able to surround them. They're in grave danger. Biden should have never let this war happen. First of all, you don't want to pick on somebody that's a lot larger than you, even with the money. There's a lot of money that we gave them and a lot of equipment. We make the best military equipment in the world, but even with all of that, it's unbelievable. Right now, you have a lot of Ukrainian soldiers that are encircled and in grave danger, and I've asked them not to kill those soldiers, please, not to kill those soldiers. We don't want them killed. It's such a shame to see what's happened. A thing like that would have never happened. Inflation would have never happened. October 7th would have never happened.
Oh, my God.
Iran had no money. They were totally broke. Think of it. They had no money to give to anybody.
So why is it happening now? It's happening still. Why haven't you put an end to it? This makes no sense.
In China and everybody else that
This makes
wasn't
no
buying oil
sense.
from Iran was
You're
buying
president
it at
right
levels
now.
that they never spent before. And
Ukraine very much is still happening.
It was a sad thing. And if you look at Afghanistan, that was probably what got Putin started, because when he looked at how horribly we looked, I think the most embarrassing day, not that we got out because we were getting out. I would have been out faster than them. I was the one that got it down to the right level. But we would have kept Bagram, the big Air Force base. We would have kept it. Right now, China occupies Bagram. And the reason we would have kept it is because they were 1 hour away from where China has and builds its nuclear missiles and weapons. And they gave that up. At the dark of night, they left the lights on, and they left the dogs behind, by the way. A lot of people say, what about all the dogs? They had a lot of dogs, and they left the dogs behind. And what a shame, what a shame. The way we got out, I think it was the most humiliating time in the history of our country. The way it happened, not that we were getting out, because we wanted to get out, but we would have gotten out with dignity and strength. And what a difference a rigged and crooked election had on our country when you think about it. And the people who did this to us should go to jail. They should go to jail. So I just want to say God bless America, because we have to say God bless. We're lucky we're still here, frankly. And this whole thing could lead, I think, I think we have it. I think we have it. But this could lead to World War III very easily. Could very easily lead to World War III, but I think we're in pretty good shape. A lot better than we were before we got involved, that I can tell you. That was heading into World War III territory, and that would have been a war like no other because of nuclear weapons and other types of weapons that people you don't even want to know about. But as many of you do know, well, we're focused on persecuting, and these people were really focused on persecuting Republicans. The last administration presided over the worst increase in violent crime in our country in many, many decades. We had levels of violence and crime, and a lot of it had to do with the illegal immigrants that came in. Remember when I used to complain about it? Because I knew how tough they were, how mean they were. And they said, no, people that come into our country are all wonderful people. No, they're not wonderful. These are stone-cold killers. These are killers they make our killers look nice by comparison. They make our killers look nice. These are rough, tough people with the tattoos all over their face. Historically speaking, I don't want to discriminate against anybody, but historically speaking, they're not going to be the head of any major bank that we know of. These are rough people. These are rough killer people, and they allowed them in by the millions. In major cities like New York, Chicago, and Washington, mothers can't walk their children to the park without fear of being shot or killed or raped or anything. Women can't ride the subway without worrying that a hoodlum will shove them onto the train tracks. In New York, it's happened twice in the last couple of weeks. They're standing there, perfect Wall Street gentleman in one case, and another person who was a worker, good worker, electrician, gets pushed into a train going 45 miles an hour just prior to the train, not stopping, going to go through that. So I know the stations very well. I used to take the subway. I used to feel safe. When I was young, my parents would drop me off at the subway. I'd take the subway to my school. Can you believe it? Today, they wouldn't be doing that. And we want to get a country back maybe where you can do that again, Pam. But it's so sad to see what's taking place. Under the Biden regime, average monthly homicides increased by 14%. Property crime rose tremendously. Violent crime went up at least 37% that they know of. Rape soared by 42%. Car theft rose by 48%. And robberies surged to 63 to 100%. They don't even know what the number is. And I have no higher mission as President of the United States than to end this killing and stop this law-breaking and to making America safe again. And that's what you're all about in this room. We want to protect Americans, and we protect everybody that's in our country, American or not American. We want to have a safe and proud country. We're joined today by dozens of police officers, sheriffs and sheriff's deputies from all across the country. My message to these law enforcement heroes is simple. With me in the White House, you once again have a president who will always have your back, will always have your back.
Yeah, no, they're definitely doing a great job. That's why they're coming after student protesters and calling them terrorists.
Thank you.
That's Trump's crime and
That's
punishment.
a lot of good-looking people. I will
Trump's
tell you,
crime
I
and
feel
punishment
safe.
attitude
I'm glad
is
you're in the room. I feel even
criminalizing
safer.
dissent.
It's a lot of great people. On day one, I signed an executive order directing Attorney General to ensure that anyone who murders a police officer immediately, with as fast a trial as we can have, gets the death penalty.
Robbery went up 100%, like every single person is getting robbed. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be every single person getting robbed, but he's lying about all of that, of course.
And last month, I fired all the radical left pro-crime U.S. attorneys appointed by Joe Biden.
It's kind of funny to also fucking do this at the Department of Justice after pardoning every single January 6th insurrectionist. Half of them have been killed by now, by the way. Not half of them, but like a weird number of January 6th insurrectionists have been shot by cops at traffic stops. Okay? Some of them have gone back to prison because they were pedophiles. And this guy pardoned all of them. Gave a blanket pardon to all of them. And now he's over here being like, I love my cops. I love my cops. My cops, my law enforcement. Okay? It's insane.
And I remember Obama wouldn't.
It's very clear. It's just like, you are not in violation of the law. If you do anything for me, if you do something for me, it doesn't matter. I will protect you. If you do something against me, I will punish you with the long dick of the law.
I want to do it with Biden. And Biden didn't know why. I didn't, if they would have asked him, he wouldn't have been able to answer the question. He could never answer a question. They said my press conference yesterday was longer than all of Biden's press conferences put together for the last 4 years. And I don't know if that's true, but it was close. And perhaps most importantly, we're securing our border and repelling the invasion of America. We have, you see the numbers have come down. So, and Tom Homan and Christie have been incredible. Christy Noem, secretary, she's done great. And Tom Homan is, I don't know if Tom Homan's here.
She's been, not a dog is safe around Christy.
People out of our country.
She keeps going on these raids to kill all of the dogs.
But he's a fantastic guy. And he's a brave guy. Over the past 4 years, other countries emptied out their prisons and jails, mental institutions, and insane asylums, and sent the killers, drug smugglers, and bloodthirsty inmates from the filthiest dungeons of the world straight into the USA. And open border. We had an open border policy. Anybody could come in, no matter what you were, no matter where you came from, no matter what you looked like, no matter what you were doing, no matter what you did, no matter how many people you murdered, you could come right into our country. We have murderers right now walking the streets. We're joined today by Tammy Nobles, whose 20-year-old daughter, Kayla, was attacked in her home 3 years ago, horrifically assaulted and strangled to death by an illegal alien MS-13 monster set loose into our country under the open border Biden regime. Kayla was one of countless American victims ripped away from their families by the open border policies of that administration. And we're also joined by Kayla's stepfather, Jeremiah, and several other courageous angel families here today. And I'd love you to all just stand up and take a bow because you are incredible people. Please. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. But I want you to know that we are working every day to expel these savages from our country and ensure that what happened to your loved ones
because
will
I'm
never
talking
happen
about
again.
how
So their legacy is going to be a great one.
your
Thank
relatives
you all
were
very much.
ruthlessly
Appreciate it.
murdered.
On
Come
day
on, take
one
a
of
bow.
my administration, I declared a national emergency on our southern border. In our first full month in office, we achieved the lowest level of illegal border crossings ever recorded. Okay, even lower than
We're going to talk
4
about the
years ago.
definitions that of anti-Semitism under the Trump DOJ that they will use to
For years,
prosecute
Democrats
Americans.
and the media kept saying that we needed new legislation. We had to have new legislation. We needed it immediately. And I never had legislation. I had the best border in the history of our country for almost 4 years. And by the time I got out, we had the lowest numbers ever. My favorite chart of all time was brought down that day. And on that chart said we had the lowest numbers ever. But it turned out that we really didn't need new legislation. All you needed was a new president. And I said that the other night. That's all you needed was a new president saying, close the borders because the Border Patrol is unbelievable, ICE is unbelievable, and all of our law enforcement is just incredible. All of you guys are amazing, and the people of our country respect you and they love you, and a lot of times you don't hear that because you have to listen to the fake news back there, but they have great respect for you, so I just want you to know that. And you know, that includes our fire departments too. They don't get spoken about enough. You know, they go into some of the areas I read where they're shooting them off ladders. Can you believe it? They go up to put out a fire, Leo, and they go and they shoot them off a ladder. It's just unbelievable. These firemen and women are incredible. So I want to put them in the same category because they're just incredible. I also like that the fact they voted for me like at 94%. So I have to mention them. I have no choice, right? But the truth is they're phenomenal people. The law enforcement, fire, everybody, they're phenomenal. Basically first responders, because that's what they are. They're first responders. And we're ending the migrant occupation of America. And what we're doing now is we're liberating our cities and our suburbs and our towns. And you see a big difference. I'm getting calls all the time from even leaders of other countries saying, sir, the whole world feels liberated now. It feels like there's a light over America, but there's a light over the whole world. I hear that so much. It's so nice to hear, too. And I feel it. I mean, I feel it. I look at it. I see the polls. I don't know if the polls are right, but they're certainly very good. I'll take them right now. It's amazing what's taken place in such a short period of time, really 6 weeks, but it's longer than that. It's really November 5th. I think that hopefully will go down, if you do your job great, it'll go down as the most important day, one of them at least in the history of our country. You know, July 4th was 1776, it was pretty important too. But let's see if we can top it. Can we top it? I don't know. That's a tough one, but we're going to try. But it will be one of the most important days in the history of our country. So I think, and I think everybody in this room wants that to happen. Last month, we officially designated MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. That's the Venezuelan gang, the toughest gang, they say, in the world, and the Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. That's a big deal. Nobody wanted to do that in the past. And by the way, we've caught hundreds of them, the Venezuelan gang, which is as bad as it gets. And you'll be reading a lot of stories tomorrow about what we've done with them. And you'll be very impressed, and you'll feel a lot safer, too, because they are a vicious group.
He's filibustering until the Senate debates are over. I don't think he cares.
Areas of Colorado. They sort of were like me. They
it's
were
already
in the
a given, it
business,
seems,
but they
right?
didn't
He's
go
already
out
got
and
them
get
all.
financing. They just took over a building and kept it. And they said to the tenants, get the hell out of here. One man called the police, and they cut off his fingers. And they say, you call again, your other fingers, and you call a third time, and you're dead. These are tough people and bad people, and we're getting them out of our country. And some are so bad, we don't want to get them out. We have to put them in jail because we don't want to even take a chance that they can come back. Thanks to our efforts, Mexico recently handed over 29 of the biggest cartel leaders, including the depraved kingpin charged with the 1985 murder of DE agent Kiki Camarena. And that was a big deal, if you know. They've been looking for this person for years, many years.
I'm not going to watch the roll call vote. Once we know what the final vote is, then we'll watch the final vote. You know what? Fuck it. All right. Yeah. All right. We'll watch it. Why not? Let's see. Let's see where they go.
In terms of playing the long game, thinking about how Democrats need to position themselves to meaningfully combat the Trump administration moving forward, this would not be the winning fight. And I certainly understand the progressive anger. I certainly understand House Democrats who feel like they walked out on a plank and took a tough vote.
Former
That
White
you
House
can
spokesperson
back and forth. But I do
defending
think for the long-term,
like 8 people in the Democratic Party right now against the entire base and against the rest of the establishment Democrats.
And think about in the Senate,
all of the centrists are against this.
States, and that's going to be a tough. I think.
Who is this for?
Take it from me,
as a House Republican, those that instigate the shutdown eat it on the back end. So don't do it.
Great.
Don't do it.
So you have on CNN a Republican who doesn't want the Democrats to vote against the continuing resolution. You have a former White House spokesperson also criticizing Democrats. Where is like a representative for the voters, like normal voters?
Younger Democrats are chafing at and increasingly complaining about what they see as the feebleness of the old guard's efforts to push back.
It's not just young Democrats, Chad. It's not. Nancy Pelosi is not a young Democrat. Nancy Pelosi is the oldest Democrat. She might be one of the oldest people around.
Town square. How does this potentially, this emerging dynamic,
this as though this is a battle between establishment Democrats and progressives. This, in my opinion, would only force Americans to recognize that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party is correct, and these guys are completely delusional.
Fight. They need to actually have an internal fight. It's benefited the Republicans, I would argue. You know, there's always been this, the old conventional wisdom was a divided party is the one that gets hurt. But in sometimes it actually, you show life. This, you know, going ahead and having this debate, having this fight, sort of where should the party be? Now, both things can be true in what the Times said, in that I think Schumer tactically is looking at the land, realized he had there was no end game here. If you shut down the government, how are you going to reopen it? And it was only going to put them in a worse position. But I did wonder why Schumer is still there. Like, I was surprised after that, meaning, and I say this, this is nothing to do, it's sort of like, after you have a loss like the Democrats had, it's sort of like, it's time to sort of, hey, bring in a new set of leaders all over the map. You know, I am surprised that the Senate Democrats aren't led by a Michael Bennet or an Amy Klobuchar right now, in that it is probably time for that generational handover. It happened on the Republican side, right, from McConnell to Thune. So, like, both things could be true here, although I do believe Schumer took one for his team in a way that was probably really necessary for the party in this moment.
Well, maybe it lets him, as someone who perhaps understands that
I'd be shocked
he may
if he's
not
running
be leader
again.
forever.
Yeah.
And I broadly agree with this, and I think Schumer obviously remains in place, but you do see Democrats, you see Jeanne Shaheen stepping down, you see Tina Smith stepping down. I do think you see a recognition across the leadership of the Democratic Party that it's time for some fresh blood.
All right, we're going to keep watching this critical vote in the Senate. We're going to talk shortly with Senator Chris Coons. He'll be live in the...
Oh. What is this?
Price on human life. And so I feel like I can speak for the entire fentanyl fighting community when I say thank you to President Trump, and thank you.
Thank you for the tariffs, President Trump. You're really doing a great job combating the fentanyl crisis.
God bless America.
He brought out another prop to be like, this is a person who was victimized by fentanyl. I assume one of her family members OD'd. Okay, to say like, this is why we're doing the tariffs. 0 people think this is why they're doing the tariffs. No one believes this.
Thank you, Ann, very much. Weston is, I just said to Ann, Weston is up in heaven watching his mom, and he's so proud of you. He's so proud of you. Thank you. We're also joined today by a number of other American families who have lost loved ones to fentanyl, and I'd love you to just stand up for a second, and we want to acknowledge you, and also your daughters, your sons. They're looking down on you, and they're loving you like crazy. So thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This department will not rest until we have ended the fentanyl epidemic in America once and for all. In less than 2 months since I took office, the DEA and FBI have seized nearly 1 million deadly doses of fentanyl, and that's just the beginning. At my direction and working with Pam and everybody else, we've launched an all-out war on fentanyl traffickers, and it's a war that we're going to win. We're going to win this war. I spoke with the president of Mexico, very nice woman, very fine woman, and I said, let me ask you, you're sending a lot of drugs into our country. We're not liking it at all. Can't do that. But I said, is Mexico, does it have much of a drug? She said, no, we're not a consuming nation. I thought it was an interesting term. And I said, why?
In pure form,
and which I've heard also, by the way, they're not a consuming nation. They distribute, but they don't consume. But I said, why are you not a consumer? Well, we're very close with family. I said, so we're very close with family, too. I mean, our families are being devastated. And
I listened to the New York Times podcast with the journalist that claimed that fentanyl labs in Mexico were shutting down because Donald Trump was terrifying Mexico. Yeah, I know. I talked about how the New York Times was also manufacturing consent for Trump's policies. The notion that Mexico is applying additional, like the notion that like the Mexican government is like doing additional crackdowns more than they have already is ridiculous. They've been actively combating this stuff. And Claudia Sheinbaum basically said as much. They were like, we've been actively combating it. Look, line goes down. And Trump was like, okay, there it is. They're listening to us. He's just looking for a victory. That's all he's looking for here. So he'll take whatever he can.
Campaign that's, I think, really incredible. More than anything else, it's terrible.
Fentanyl is trafficked into the United States by American citizens. Fentanyl is trafficked and purchased by American citizens, is sold by American citizens. Every step of this process is led by Americans, okay? Yes, the production of the chemical compounds necessary to make fentanyl is done by the cartels, but every single aspect of fentanyl is for Americans and by Americans. Okay? You cannot, I repeat, you cannot try to target the drug trade by thinking that you can just like stop, thinking that you can do additional enforcement. The only way to stop the drug trade is by focusing on rehabilitation. As a matter of fact, the Biden administration successfully lowered the number of overdoses due to opiates for the first time in decades. And the reason for why they did that was because they actually targeted, they did mass Narcan distribution, and they had a more progressive approach to dealing with people who were addicted. Now, it wasn't the best approach. It certainly wasn't the greatest approach of all time. But yeah, deadliest phase of the fentanyl crisis eases. All states see recovery. The peak was 2022 to 2023. The drug overdose deaths have lowered for the first time in decades due to Biden's safe use locations and all the stuff that the Republicans constantly chirped at him over. Many of those programs are still in action. That is the only way that you can actually curb back on the overdoses by treating addiction not as a crime, but instead as an illness, because that's what addiction is. It is an illness. If you criminalize addiction, you will just have more addiction. You will never be able to deal with this problem. But it ultimately doesn't matter because it's not like the tariffs are for dealing with the fentanyl crisis. I mean, really? Canada? Really? A tremendous amount of fentanyl is crossing the border from Canada? People say, oh, well, 1 gram can kill 7 gorillion people. You don't understand. It's like, okay, dude. That's the reason why we're putting tariffs on Canada? That's the reason why we're putting tariffs on China? That's the reason why we're putting tariffs on EU? Because of fentanyl? No. It's just the only enforcement mechanism that he has. Because it's like, declare it a national security and then use that as a justification for why you want to do tariffs. I don't know why he wants to do tariffs. I still don't fully comprehend the reasoning behind it and why he keeps scaling it back and then saying we're going to do it again and then pulling it back again. Having said that, I do think it is completely ridiculous to like believe Trump when he says, "Oh, I'm tariffing every country that is in the sphere of American influence. I'm tariffing every country in the sphere of American influence because of fentanyl." Like Mexico is the only country where that would somewhat work if that was a successful method. It's not. It doesn't make sense for all the other countries that are getting tariffs.
Mandate that we receive, but you can't go after your political opponent. Nobody's ever seen anything like it, actually, and hopefully they won't see anything like it.
Check logs. Trump said they captured 1 million lethal doses. Yes, that means they captured a bag, okay? Please. Fentanyl is an incredibly potent and incredibly deadly drug. That's it. They get 1 bag. They get a couple grams and they're like, this kills 7 gorillion people. Everything about fentanyl, it's so ironic. It's like everything about fentanyl, the way people talk about it in the media is just completely, it's lies. You can get a contact high. Cops are dying or overdosing on fentanyl by just like being in the presence of fentanyl. Like it's all lies, okay? Liberal media has played into these lies as well. Just straight up. There's no other way to describe it. It's just a lie, okay? If that was the case, EMTs and if that was the case, if fentanyl could kill you with a contact high or whatever, EMTs and doctors and nurses would be falling apart, okay? Fentanyl is still used in a medical setting all the time. You have fent patches for pain reduction. Like, it's so stupid. Yeah, 2 milligrams of fentanyl is considered the lethal dose. So when he talks about like apprehending 1 million lethal doses, they're talking about not that much fentanyl, okay? It's just a baggie.
The toughest people I know. and they're going to do an incredible job. And it's an honor for me to have won this election so that I can appoint these people to do their job, and they're going to do it like you have never seen. So I just want to wish all of you good luck. It's going to be an interesting journey. Not going to be easy, but you're going to win. You're going to win, 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 and fight, fight, fight. And it's going to end up being a tremendous result for this country.
So far,
so thank you all very
King,
much. God
Schatz,
bless
and
America.
Durbin have
God
voted
bless
yes
you
on
all. Thank
cloture,
you.
which is crazy. The fact that Durbin voted yes on cloture is insane. Okay? I can't believe he's doing like a straight up campaign rally. He's playing YMCA at the DOJ.
Fund the government. I mean,
Dick Durbin
that is hard.
voting yes on cloture is so stupid.
Johnson, the Republican leadership team, putting that together.
One thing I want to kind of bring
pee.
into this